On the On to Something podcast, which is a sports media podcast that looks at the personal sides of those in the industry, is none other than Pat Sullivan. He is a power player in the industry of sports media, the president of Game Creek Video, and also once an executive with the then Boston/New England Patriots. We're going to have a fun conversation looking at his life and having a conversation here. I'm Bryan Fenley, working with different media outlets, doing different events. And Pat, I am thrilled to have you on. Thanks for doing this.
No, it's great to be with you. It's going to be a lot of fun.
It is, and I know that you're very familiar with this series. You probably watched a few of your friends and colleagues on with me. What are your expectations of this conversation, knowing that?
Well, I think, honestly, I I'm just hoping for a free flow of conversation about the industry, how we got to where we are today. Some reflections on past history about media rights deals and how they have changed and changed the landscape. Um, you could you could get into a discussion on NIL and spend 5 days doing that. But there's just a lot. There's a lot stirring around our industry, and when I say that, our broader industry, not just the mobile TV industry, which is relatively small, but there's a lot stirring around us that affects our business and affects everybody's business that's involved.
We'll
So
get,
yeah, I just want to talk about stuff like that. It's very interesting, I think.
yeah, we'll get into that as well. We'll also learn about more about who you are outside the industry. And so as we start this conversation up here, we rev it up. What is it like skiing with you?
It depends. If you're a really good skier, like a, a ski instructor or even a ski racer. I've skied with some ski racers in the past. You have to wait. If you're an average skier and you really like to run around all over the place and explore different parts of the mountain, then you're going to have a lot of fun. Because we have a home in Beaver Creek, so we ski Beaver Creek, we ski Vail, two of the great mountains in the world, and there's just so much to do there and cover, and if you're with the right group, you can just have an enormous amount of fun.
What's the right group having an enormous amount of fun look like at Game Creek Video?
Well, in some instances, it can be clients. We have some clients who are active skiers. We do the World Cup downhill races here at Beaver Creek. We have been doing it for many years now. So I get to ski with some of our clients, and the folks who operate in the ski industry. I'm talking about camera operators, replay folks, audios, A2s, and they're really, really adept skiers, and they really strong skiers, and it's a lot of fun skiing with those folks, because they when they get a free moment, they rip it up pretty good.
What is the most breathtaking piece of scenery that you have seen while skiing?
I I would say that there is a certain view uh, of the Gore Mountain Range that you see from the very top of Grouse Mountain at Beaver Creek. That's pretty spectacular. There's another view. They recently opened an area over at a place called McCoy Park, and there's this completely expansive view of the Gore Mountain Range, um, Vale, the back bowls of Vale, including Game Creek Bowl, by the way, and that one's pretty cool. That's pretty special.
With that said, what parallels can you find in proverbial or metaphorically, let me say this, mountain climbing, being an explorer when it comes to the industry and what you have found and the way you've operated in sports media as being an explorer, as somebody that's climbed the mountain per se?
Well, that's a really terrific question, because there are a lot there are a lot of similarities. So there's there's risk, there's reward, there's speed, the ability to move quickly, to make quick decisions, to adapt. When you think about a downhill racer and the adaptation that they have to go through, that it just runs the gamut from conditions to the where they stand in the race. I mean, basically, just there's so many things that they have to adapt to. So I think there's a lot of analogies between what we do as a company and what ski racers have to do to be successful. And I think it's primarily things like being proactive rather than reactive. I think any ski racer would say they're initiating their turn for the next gate before they've even started into the gate before, So they'll there's just a lot of stuff like that. We have to be, in order to be ahead of the game, we have to be very, very proactive, and we have to be adaptive, and we have to be able to move quickly. We have to change very, very quickly. Post pandemic, there was a major change in the way television was produced, particularly on the regional levels, of which we have a lot of great regional customers. And we had to pivot, right in the middle of the pandemic, and present them with a new system that would allow them to produce independent production. So that was a I don't know, probably 2.5 months, and we basically presented a plan that effectively changed the way you produce regional sports. And that's pretty adaptive and pretty quick thinking on the part of our engineering group. So
How do you get people? How do you have the ability, the knack to move as fast as you have?
well, you hire really smart people. That was one thing my dad told me when I started in this. It sounds like really an interesting thing. You better hire smart people. And I did. And the smartest ones have been with us for 25 plus years now. And they have created a culture, not only I'm trying to think of the right word, a cultural culture, the way the company feels and everything else, but they've also created a technical culture, which is, this is the way Game Creek does it. You go into one Game Creek truck, it looks just like a lot of other Game Creek trucks, even though it may be 10 years younger or 10 years older. So that makes it much easier for the production staff to do their thing, not have to worry about relearning when they get in there. So I think the key, there's no secret to this. The key to the success of any business is finding the right people and putting them in the right spot, and then giving them the resources to succeed.
What is the key to driving one of your trucks?
Pride, pride, that's the one thing that I hear from our drivers all the time is that they have immense pride in driving the trucks. At the very beginning of the conversation, I don't know if it was even during the recorded session, you said aesthetics are really important, right? And aesthetics on a mobile TV truck that's producing, for example, the NBA Finals, that truck better look really, really good when it pulls into Boston and sets up. And it's really, is it clean? Is it polished? Is it shiny? Is it, is there no rust on it? All those things create a big impression. And the people that manage that are our drivers, and they're the ones that actually make that work really, really well, because they care so much about their trucks. They have so much pride. They pull into a truck stop and it's like, wow, what is that thing? Um, because they're very impressive, and they're in beautiful condition.
Yeah, the ability for you to have that impression on people means so much. And when you think about, and this is something that you're very, very familiar with, and that is winning the room. No matter where you are, no matter the colleagues that you're in the room with, what have you found, Pat, that's allowed you the tenets that you have, where you are able to win over a room?
Well, in our industry, winning a room is a daily exercise. We did several uh, Copa games last night for HBS. We're doing the Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final tonight in Miami. If we don't win those events and perform at a very high level, we take all the wind out of the room. you know, so winning the room is just a daily. It's a daily exercise in very, very high performance in very, very high profile events.
Besides work, where do you find that you hold yourself at a very uh, high standard too? Whether that's something outside of work, where, as you were talking about with those who you work with and the quality that you seek and that you attain, where do you find that that idea is infiltrating your life, say outside of just Game Creek Video, where you want to hit a certain level and you have to hit that certain level?
Well, I think uh, I think that's evolved over time, and it really has evolved since our sons have presented us with 7 incredible grandchildren. And I think you know the perspective of caring for them, making sure that they're safe, healthy, that their future is taken care of, for certain things. They're going to have to work on their own, but for certain things, making sure their future is there's preparation for that. I think that's probably the area that I have really focused on the most over the last 6 or 7 years.
What are you going to share with them, or have you already, and what has that looked like? What you were like at that younger age, and that you would bestow upon stories from when you were that age to say them now, stories about you that they would hear from you.
They don't want to hear from me about me when I was their age, but I can tell them stories about their fathers when they were their age, and they're intrigued with that. For me, you might as well be talking about you might as well be talking about the Middle Ages. It's
But you've got this experience as a ball boy in the NFL with the Patriots. That's something that has been discussed. If you were to sit down with all of your grandchildren or one of your grandchildren and run through what that experience was like, what do you think that they would hold on to the most from you sharing what that was like?
I I'd be hard pressed to figure that out because there are so many amazing experiences, just unbelievable experiences being a ball boy. What you saw on the sideline, and if you're 10, 11, 12 years old, you're really pretty obscure. You're almost invisible to the other guys on the sideline, the coaches, the players, the trainers, uh, the other folks that work for the team. So you see and hear so much. It's um I wouldn't trade that experience for anything, because it was just one thing after another. You go to Buffalo and you have a certain experience in Buffalo at the old War Memorial Stadium where they shot what, the Robert Redford movie. What was that? Oh, the Natural, right?
Oh yeah, okay.
So they shot the Natural at this old ballpark that the Bills played in, and we played. With the first 3 seasons we played there, and virtually every time we went up there, it was truly the frozen tundra, and it was Buffalo, New York, the Polo Grounds. We played a game in the Polo Grounds once, and played a lot of games in Shea Stadium. Frank Ewell Field, and so some of the history of the game, I saw firsthand. And that was really a lot of fun. That was really a lot of fun.
Your kids, your grandkids, they're seeing firsthand what you're doing here and taking that next step from working as an executive, as a GM in the NFL with the Patriots to now what you're doing with remote sports production. And you touched a little bit about how you want them to think of you as someone who can be a source of inspiration. What do you want them to know about what people don't see, but the hard work when nobody was watching, late nights that you had to do to not only get your career in the NFL moving forward, but also to grow what you've grown at Game Creek Video? That level of hard work and what it looked like firsthand that you can tell and show and exemplify to your kids, but also your grandkids to say, hey, this is how you make something happen.
I think that's a terrific question, and it's a little bit different. It's a lot different. I started my Patriots career literally when I was 8, um, and I finished my Patriots career, I think, when I was about 38, something like that. And the amount of work that went um, uh, into really effectively helping to build the franchise was a completely different experience than the amount of work that went into building Game Creek. Even though Game Creek was effectively a from scratch operation, and they had some similarities, which I touched on before. Hire some smart people. We hired some smart people in the NFL. We drafted some good players. That's like hiring smart people, and we're fortunate enough to go to a Super Bowl one year. Got pasted by the Bears, but nonetheless, it was a great experience to go there. So they're you know they're different, but there's a lot of similarities, which is don't get distracted. Um, Keep your eye on the prize, right? And don't let a lot of exterior noise affect your judgment and affect your working your working systems, the way you approach things on a day-to-day basis and things like that.
I'm curious, Pat, from what I've read, you did some on-air work too at some point, and I want to know what that was like and how you approach that.
Well, I think I have to say that after being um, uh, on the receiving end of a lot of questions from the guys, particularly the guys and women in Boston that covered us on TV, Bob Lobel, Mike Lynch, uh, John Dennis, some really great people. And then, every one of those folks had a entourage of camera operators who were great people. Tommy Raycamp, uh, Disco Danny Murata. They were just this group of great camera operators, and we got to have a pretty good relationship. So that if they were about to interview me, Tommy Raycamp would say, "Fix your hair." Fix your hair. You look like hell. right? So now Lobel would not say that, but Tommy would, So when they found out that I was actually going to be talent, then there was sort of this collective roar of laughter. But that was a great experience too. I went to work at the Christian Science Monitor, and they had a thing called the Monitor Channel, and they wanted to do a nightly report on sports business, and they sent me to Washington D.C. to get trained on being on air and writing stories. And I was always pretty decent writer, so that wasn't really that difficult a problem. And then we had these editors there, and I'd walk in with a bunch of tapes and sit down and say, "Help me fix this." And they felt great about it because they could actually instead of being told what to do by talent, they could actually tell me what to do. So that was a great learning experience. And while I was there, I happened to meet a bunch of technical people because the Monitor Channel was the most technically advanced new enterprise in broadcasting at the time, and it included some of the leading people in the industry. Dave Mazza, who ended up at the Olympics, Chip Adams ended up at the Olympics, Willis Pelagian ended up at CBS. There were just some real brilliant technical minds. So, when that was starting to fall apart, I started to pay more attention to that because I had entertained the idea of going after a couple of mobile units when I left the Patriots, but I never fulfilled that, and I went to work at the Monitor Channel for a couple of years. But that was two really productive years for me because I learned a lot about the television business.
Monitor Channel, obviously, from what you're saying, very much a cultivating ground for a lot of people, using that as a springboard to do incredible things in this industry. And when you made that pivot from the Monitor and now you're eventually wanting to fully focus in remote broadcasting, you want to get into the truck business and take that on head on, what sort of limb did you have to go off on to fully make that happen, and the risk that you knew was there, but also you knew that you could accomplish and you could tackle?
Well, it was a long, skinny limb, and I would hardly call it a stable limb. I was buying a couple of trucks from a company called Sure Shot Teleproductions, and the guy that owned that was a real alchemist. He cobbled together as best he could two trucks, but it was in a transition. People were moving from analog cameras to digital cameras, and he was struggling raising the money to make that transition. So I came in and bought the two trucks. He stuck around for a few years as a partner, and was a great guy. We had a great relationship. And then from there, we just started to grow the company. We put some money into upgrading cameras so that we could meet ESPN specifications, and the other networks were starting to specify for digital cameras as well. This was 1993, so it's well before high def, which came in 2004. So it was a long, skinny limb. We really had to work at changing the image of these trucks was really the primary focus, and we were able to do that pretty quickly. Fortunately, hired some great engineers, and then started building our own trucks. And when we started doing that, then that really kind of put us on a different path and made the limb a lot thicker.
And it is at its thickest now and will continue to get even thicker considering everything that you're doing. You mentioned tonight as we tape this, Game 7 of Stanley Cup final and everything else that you're doing in other respects and with other networks and other major sporting events. I want to leave you with this last question here, Pat. And as I'm listening to your story, one of the hallmark attributes that I'm hearing about is you got to be strong-willed. And whether it's whatever life throws at you, whether you're working in the NFL or you make this pivot, being a grandfather, being a dad, strong will is the name of the game for you. Where are the origins of that character trait for you? Because when I look at just the grand spectrum and scheme of your life, I see that. But where did that start? Where did you get that from?
My mother and father, and my father was the most visionary man in the history of sports. Okay, so I know that sounds like hyperbole, but he invented the luxury box. He invented naming rights. He invented the highlight film. He these are things he did in the 40s that nobody ever gave him any credit for. He helped to invent a thing called the Jimmy Fund in Boston, which is part of Dana-Farber Cancer Institute, which has raised billions of dollars for cancer research in children and adults. But he couldn't have done it without my mother.
Oh,
Oh, and by the way, he invented the Patriots.
yes.
He worked like hell to get an NFL franchise in the late 50s. Um, he could not pull that off. But then when the American Football League started, he was able to get a franchise, and he put 10 guys together, and they started the Patriots in 1960. So, but he could not have done that without my mother, because the early years of the Patriots were a struggle. That would talk about a thin limb, you know, and and uh, and he was the source of quite a bit of jealousy amongst some of the sports writers in Boston, and would oftentimes be criticized. And my mother was the backbone behind all that, and making sure that he kept the eye on the prize, and he's. I know the two of them right now are exceptionally proud of what they created together. Um, one of the certainly one of the greater franchises in the history of sports.
I think even with that statement, I think you're underselling the importance of the Patriots and what they've been since then to now. And you said it, eye on the prize. Your parents instilled that in you. You've instilled that in yourself, and you can see that trickling down to your kids and their kids. So the Sullivan name is in a really good spot right now, and I'm so thankful, Pat, to have this conversation with you. And as we wrap it up, just to kind of go down the realm of work, and we knew we were going to go there, but also to learn more about you as the grandfather, you as the dad, where that familial inspiration comes from your parents. That just it adds to the intrigue of your life and what it took for you to get to where you are today as president of Game Creek Video. I'm so thankful for you. Thanks so much for doing this, Pat.
It's great to be with you, Bryan.